The FujiCast is an independent Loading Zone production.
If you're listening to this on the day it comes out, i.e. Monday the 3rd of August, then the following few seconds of information is bang up to date and on the money. If it's any time after, as my good friend Kev says, the mileage may vary. But we wanted to say a hearty big thank you to Neil Ford, who's guided the FujiCast at 4 Facebook group. So that's FujiCast, all one word, then at, using A-T, then 4, the numerical, FujiCast at 4, yes. He's guided it from the very start brilliantly. The idea is that for 1 year, you post a picture between the hours of 4 and 5 p.m. in the time zone relevant to you each day in that group. And those that post consistently, or the most across a year, have a prize at the end of it, which I believe we're still saving up for. It's most importantly, of course, a prize of pride that you can wear. But we're all magpies at heart and love opening boxes of stuff, so we thought we'd throw something your way too. 183 days in today, so we're halfway there. 5 people have been superb so far and posted, shall we just say, consistently enough to make the halfway podium of 5. But don't let that put you off. There's still half a year to go. Well done so far to Adam Richardson, Fran Corbett, Leon Lewis, Mandy Burton and Sven Brandola. You're all stars. Keep posting. And thank you, Neil Ford, for being nothing short of amazing. Let's start the show. And hold on, Kev. I think I need to drop the pace for this bit first, before the theme tune. I don't want to depress you, Kev, but right now you should be in Spain with your beer. Usually you start around about 7 in the morning, don't you? Normally the first Insta post comes out of you with beer, 7 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah, although actually it's been just as early as that during lockdown. Yeah, we should be in Spain.
Airport time.
C'est la vie, as they don't say in Spain, they say in France.
Well, what do they say in Spain, since you speak Spanish?
They would say, mañana, come tomorrow, let's do it tomorrow, let's start again tomorrow.
There is a whole language apart from mañana.
Yeah.
You are going to go next year, though, haven't you? Tell me you've booked time out for next year.
I always book time out.
Yeah.
It's always blocked in the diary, 6 weeks blocked out. So, yep. Next year, it does depend a little bit on the school. When the schools break up, we don't know. Well, because we can't go when the kids are still in school.
What school?
Yeah, well, that's true. That might be still the case next year.
No, it won't. God's sake.
So yeah, we will go. And although next year, funny enough, the final weekend of Up Spain, as our kids call it, we're going up Spain.
Going up Spain? That's down to Spain. What are they talking about?
I know. I actually have a wedding booked that's been booked for 2.5 years in France.
Oh.
The last weekend of August next year.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, but I kind of have this little mental thing in my head. It's like, I don't work in August. That's I don't want to work in August.
Well, you do now.
So I will be working that weekend. So my plan, potentially, I don't even know why we're talking about this. It's like a year away and all things could happen. But my plan is to send Gemma and the kids home and I'll...
you mean you're going to send them home early so that they're not there enjoying the holiday while you're not there?
They will go back and then they'll fly off to London or whatever and I'll fly off up to Toulouse or whatever.
Do you know what? I almost had that in reverse because Toulouse is where Auntie Sue lives. You know Auntie Sue, don't you? Of course you do. And we used to go to Auntie Sue's quite a lot. And we haven't been so much over the last couple of years, but we used to go there quite a lot. She's got a lovely place down the south of France. And they were all booked in, and I was booked in to go to Toulouse, and then a wedding booking came in, and I took it. And I had to wave them off at the station at Victoria, knowing that they were going off to Auntie Sue's, which is always a great time. Got the pool, she cooks really nicely. They go out to the cheese market.
Horrible, isn't it?
Now I'd give anything to go to a wedding instead of Auntie Sue's. Please, give me a wedding, Auntie Sue, please.
The FujiCast.
Right, hello, welcome to the FujiCast. It's another week. You and your questions from our electronic mailbag. And of course now, also through the FujiCast private Facebook group, you're welcome to become a part of. You can send your questions through there as well. Haven't we got modern? If you want to send a mail, though, send it the old-fashioned way to click at fujicast.co.uk. Thank you to our friends of the show, and especially those who are writing in first time. You're very welcome. And welcome aboard those who don't shoot Fuji as well. We've got some club indulgence for you. There's what's Kev's book of the week this week? I see one standing by.
My book of the week this week is Sylvia Plaschy.
Oh.
Self-portraits.
This
Cows Going Home. What a great title.
The Cow's Going Home?
Yeah. Self-portraits with cows going home.
Well, I've never seen that one before, so that's your book of the week.
Good book.
And of course, after today's show, some of the subjects get picked up in the private Facebook group. And appearing on the show, we've got Chris Orange. So that's all in the show today. So, oh God, look, as you leaf through that book here, before we even get to it, this is my kind of book, Kev.
I know.
Yeah.
It's one of my favourites. It's still, I've even still got it in its little cellophane thing.
I know. Does that mean you stole it from the library?
Do you know what? I was just thinking.
It looks like you nicked it from Waterstones.
I was actually just thinking, I have no idea where I got this from. And then I think it came from the World's End. You know the bookshop in the World's End in Chelsea?
No.
It has a beautiful little bookshop. You know the World's End in Chelsea?
No, I don't.
Well, the World's End is at the end of the King's Road.
Right.
It's the World's End estate.
Right, okay. I didn't know this.
And it's like a big estate. And just before you get off the end of the King's Road onto the World's End estate is a bookshop. It says on the back here, gift aid item, so I think it must be charity something or other. I'm sure I got it from there. But I failed to look to see whether this is still available, how much it is or anything. So we will do that during the show.
You know, but books that come in cellophane when you're in somewhere like Waterstones and you want to have a little leaf through it to see if it's the kind of thing that you want to buy, and it's in that plastic wrapping.
Yeah.
Now I know it's not the done thing, is it, to undo the plastic wrapping?
No, normally they have one.
No.
available.
You know, on those occasions where they don't, it's the last one. You think, oh, do I want this or not? Can I? Do you break open the wrapping?
I wouldn't
Wouldn't you?
personally. I'd probably take it to the counter and say, "Excuse me."
When you break open the wrapping?
Yeah, can you do it for me?
That makes me a terrible person then. I'm exactly the same in B&Q when I go to buy some screws and I want to make sure they fit. I undo them.
And then all the screws fall out and the next person's got one screw too little.
Oh, yeah. Oh, anyway, moving on. Right, questions. Do you want to go first?
Okay, I've got one from Alex Frederickson, who is a friend of the Facebook group for sure. She's often on there. And she says, let's talk in about the necessary evil that is currently plaguing many of us. And she says that is marketing.
What was? Yeah.
She goes on to say, I love words, but I'll be damned.
Ooh.
I'll be damned if I can write an email to potential clients. I just cannot do it.
What?
And to make it more difficult, it needs to be in German because I'm targeting local companies.
Oh, yes.
I do speak German, but my head is exploding here. How do you do this? Use an agency? Do it yourself? Well, if I was writing to a German client,
I'd write in Greek.
I would start it with Ich möchte eine Bier bitte.
Kev, it's everything to do with can I have a pint of beer?
I'm very proud of the fact that I can ask for a beer
in any language.
In many languages.
Go on then, what's Japanese?
I did know that.
You've been to Japan so many times.
I did know it. That was gone.
All right.
Hi.
Spanish?
Quisiera dos cervezas.
Yeah, I knew you'd know
That's
that one.
2 beers, please.
Two beers. That's greedy.
Anyway, so writing the emails. I'm going to ignore the German bit because she can speak German and everything, so it's not a language element to it.
No.
Although, interestingly, there is a twist on that because some cultures do have more, I think Germany, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say this, they have more formal, it's much more of a formal language. So it's harder to, certainly from my memory of German in school anyway, it doesn't really have too many colloquialisms and slang and stuff like that. So it's hard to be anything other than formal, I would imagine, or formal sounding in the email. But if it's marketing in general, then I would say be yourself. Your voice, pass over your own voice, so to speak. But particular emails themselves, I have a whole load of template emails typically that I just kind of send.
What do you use?
Boilerplate? Boilerplate? Templates? Is that what they call them?
Boilerplates.
I don't know.
Talking about. Do you? I use Text Expander for. And I know there's many different flavors out there, but. So I put a couple of letters in that sort of makes Text Expander come alive and recognise the fact that I want to have one of my templated emails. Oh, and then I might write episodes, or I might write new client, or I might write contract, and then up comes the email, and I just.
Okay.
I find that really, really. I mean, I write so many emails, even in these times of not having a lot of work.
Is that not like an auto?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But I'm just thinking that's a great. It just sounded like Alex is sort of getting a bit tired with writing lots of emails. It might be a way of
maybe
shortening that process down.
Yeah. So auto replies, not auto replies. That's not the right word. What they call them in Outlook? They call them signatures.
Signatures.
Mail signatures.
Yeah.
That's what I use. I just do big signatures.
Yeah.
and you use Text Expander, which sounds like a Mac thing. I don't think that's a Windows thing.
Yeah, I mean, I could use signatures as well, but I've just always used Text Expander.
You can do exactly the same thing on Windows using macros and stuff. But yeah, so there you go. And always remember, Alex, to ask for a beer at the end.
And how do you do that?
Ich möchte eine Bier bitte.
I'm not sure that's the advice that Alex wanted. I do think, and less people are making phone calls. I still actually think sometimes to make a phone call to somebody makes all the difference. Mm-hmm. Do you not?
Yeah.
When I now, when I've been receiving, not that there's an awful lot of inquiries at the moment, but when I do receive an inquiry, I always make a phone call. Always.
I never do.
Yeah. Well, I do at the moment. Just and often it's a voicemail, but that's fine because I'll say, look, I just want to prove there's a friendly voice behind the email you're just about to receive. Sounds a great wedding. Would love to be involved. Any questions? Give us a call back.
Do you ever get where the number is incorrect?
No, not really. No. Do you get that a lot?
No. Well, I don't ring them, but I only put I ask for the phone number on my contact form.
Oh, people put the wrong numbers in there because they don't want to be troubled?
Yeah, right. It's a non-required field for me. And I just work on the assumption if they put their phone number in, they're more of a hot lead because they're willing to give you the phone number. I don't actually ring it. But there you go.
Okay. This one's from Ronan Palliser, who is in Dublin. Oh, that would be a great place, Kev, to go for one of our conferences. Yeah, Dublin. I haven't been to Dublin for ages.
Nice guy, Ronan, as well.
Is he?
Yeah.
Has he been on one of your courses or something?
No. I'm not sure whether he was actually on the one I run in Dublin. I think he was the one that organised it for the IVVA, which is the Irish photographers thing.
Right.
So they got me over to do a session, but I don't think he could make it for some reason. But yeah, he's an ex-photographer.
No, okay. Oh, he's a Fujifilm ex-photographer.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
In Ireland.
Oh, we should be talking to him on the show. I didn't realise that. Hi, Kev. Hi, Neil. Thank you for what is an absolutely brilliant podcast. I listened religiously through most of the 2019 wedding season. You were my company on the drive to and from weddings. I'm now catching up with the episodes since then. You've got a few to do. Given the daily COVID episodes, yes, he says, I've quite a bit of catching up. Yes, you do. I'm currently listening to episode 44, where you posed the question, is wedding photography dead?
44?
That's a long time ago.
We're on 144.
100, yes. It's quite
138 or something.
Well, it's a good job you're not working much this year. You got a lot of time. You got a lot of time on your hands. Oh dear. Gallows humour. Apologies, Ronan. Yeah, I remember that one because I remember you actually sending me that's not a great title because I made a YouTube film and it kind of backfired on me a bit.
Yeah, because when people searched for your name, it came up with a video saying, is wedding photography dead?
Yeah. Be very careful what you use as titles on YouTube because it's very true that they will pop up sometimes and bite you on the... Anyway, Kevin pointed out that people are still getting married and that Ian Weldon, your guest, pointed out that people will always want a photographer, which was true pre-COVID. I wondered if, knowing what we now know in the aftermath of the C word, and seeing how the C word may fundamentally change so many things we thought were constants in the world, would you answer that question differently now? He did give us his thoughts, actually. I think that certainly people are going to reevaluate priorities in terms of weddings, at least for the rest of 2020, if not for the medium term.
I think certainly for the short, for the people who are actually getting married now and still having less than 30 people and various things like that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of those will be going ahead on much smaller budgets, and mum's iPhone will do it. So yeah, I suppose in that respect, perhaps. I think long term, no. At least I hope so.
I remember the recession, 2008, wasn't it? The following year, I had one of the best years I've had. These were different times, of course, when there were less wedding photographers, granted, and I think the photofilm product jumped up and helped me an awful lot, granted. But it did prove to me that there were families, there were people that still had the money to go and get married.
Yeah, of course there is.
Even in a terrible recession, and that wasn't a pleasant recession.
No.
Not that there are any.
We live in a very split class-based society, so there will always be people who will be getting married and be able to afford it, regardless what happens to the rest of the world. It just means that maybe less of them and less money going around, and
more of us.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. You see, that's the interesting thing about wedding photography is that. For example, yesterday, Dyson, who are the main employer in Malmesbury made 600 people redundant. They went into work in the morning, and they left in the evening, brought their bags with them. That was it.
Wow. You wouldn't expect that of Dyson.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, they weren't expecting it, put it that way.
No.
This is, we're going down twists and turns here, but Dyson sales have gone up during the pandemic because people are staying at home and vacuuming more. And
so you make this sound like a hobby.
Yeah.
Do you fancy doing some vacuuming, darling? No, well, 3 times in a day, that's decadent.
Oh, you should see how many times I've cleaned the fridge out.
That's because you're always on the hunt for the last bottle of beer.
But presumably they've wrapped up the pandemic as an excuse to cut. So anyway, what was I saying now? So maybe 20 of those people will get a redundancy package and go, oh, I know, I've got a camera, I'm pretty nifty with a camera, I'll be a wedding photographer. So actually, during times of depression, recession, whatever, I hate that word depression, you do get an influx of people who, because there's no barriers to entry, of course, buy a camera. Cameras are cheaper now, cameras are better now. A couple of £100, I'll do a wedding. Yeah, why not? I can have the week off then and not bother telling the taxman about it, and away you go. So yeah, I think there's, exactly.
No.
Tut.
What do you feel about businesses that are taking cash at the moment, where it's being dissuaded? That's going off down a big tangent.
Yeah, I mean,
2 businesses we went to last week where they wouldn't take cards.
They wouldn't take cards?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought, I won't pay with anything but a card now at the moment.
No, these 2 businesses wouldn't take cards.
What were they, like restaurants or something?
No, one was a barber. You nod like you were expecting me to say that.
I always nod. I always have a bit of irony in my eye when you mention the word barber.
Yeah. I wish I'd trained as a barber. I'd be rolling in it right now. God. And Ronan also says, destination wedding photography. He did have quite a lot of question here. That must surely be dead, chaps, i.e. where the couple fly the photographer out to the wedding location. And destination weddings themselves, they must be on the ropes.
Yeah, well, I think, pandemic aside, Brexit has done for destination weddings for us. Assuming everything goes as it's meant to go, you just won't be able to photograph weddings in France and Italy and stuff like that without...
Are you talking about the Brexit hoops for this?
Yeah, okay. Brexit, yeah. We all know people who go to America. We all know photographers who say, I'm going to go and photograph this wedding in America. Oh, have you got a visa? No, I'm just going to pretend I'm a tourist.
Yes. Now, funnily enough, I did have, I was surprised by this. I think did I send it to you? Did I send it on to you? But I did have somebody that inquired for an October wedding to go to, I think it was Pennsylvania. And I did write back and say legally, no way, can't do that.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't want to really put myself in that situation.
No, well, I often get, I haven't had any for a while, but I usually get maybe 6 or 7 a year from the States.
Yeah, and I'd love to work there.
Really want you.
God.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always reply with the same thing, saying, look, I really want to do it. I'm more than happy to look into it. Yeah. However, this is the type of visa we need to look at first. And I give them the I can't remember the actual visa number now, the visa name. And it's on your shoulder. You have to apply for that visa on my behalf.
Yeah.
And then invariably they just reply back saying, do you know anybody in America who might post it? Which is fine, and I do, and so I send them their way.
Who do you send them to in America?
Amy in New York. Okay. There's also
Joe Busing.
Joe.
I wouldn't be short of sending people to Joe Busing. That would be. Can you imagine that? You go and see Joe. He'd be brilliant for you.
Yeah, £100,000, please. $100,000. A couple. Oh god, yeah. The name. Honestly, it's been. Do you know what? I was up at 4:00 this morning.
Oh my word!
So all my names have gone out of my head.
Yeah, they've all dropped out.
And their friends as well,
one by one.
So yeah, a handful of people, and they're good.
And he said, if I'm allowed one, if I'm allowed one follow-up, he says, we not have more than one. When photographing weddings in this COVID era, do you think you'll continue to tell the story of the day as you do, warts and all, including all the COVID stuff? Or do you think couples will want something more sanitised, pardon the pun, in terms of, it doesn't feel like, or look or feel like a pandemic wedding? I suppose, we're talking about face masks and people standing 8 feet apart. See, I don't think people are going to stand 8 feet apart, to be honest, Ronan. I can't see it.
No, and also, I mean, there are different types of wedding clients, aren't there? There's people who want the fairy tale pictures that actually don't resemble anything that happened on the wedding day itself. I mean, who walks up to the top of a massive mountain and has a silhouette picture on their wedding? That's not a memory of their wedding day. That's a photo shoot.
Yes.
So, and that's fine. And so those types of people perhaps will want a very sanitized version.
Yes.
But if you want to remember your wedding during the pandemic and people were wearing masks, then masks it is, and then you'll remember those things.
Yeah, it's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would be photographing warts and all for sure.
Tell the true story. Right, one more question, then we'll do Club Indulgence.
So one more question from Ronan.
No. Yeah, it's the Ronan Show.
Come on, Ronan.
You should have a jingle. Ronan Show. Right, go on, your question.
This is from Lucas Grimes.
Yes.
Says, hi guys, thank you for the efforts you put into the Daily Show during Corona. Isn't there a song like that?
I Corona.
Yeah.
I know Corona. No, that's a different song.
There's been a lot of talk of late about Facebook and whether it really is the power horse that it once was. I know you had Nick Church on to talk about it, and I know Neil was doing a little work with Facebook on campaigns.
Yes.
I also heard a guest on Neil's Photography Daily Show who had dumped Facebook altogether as the engagement rate was next to zero.
Yeah, I've had quite a few do that, actually. Quite a few guests talking about
What
that.
are your thoughts?
How did
you get on with your campaigns?
I'm going to be honest, and it's not Nick's fault. It's probably my fault, something that I did wrong, but it didn't work. I spent 60 quid, and I got some engagement. That's true. I got some people that showed interest. That's true. Then I sent out a price list, and the wheels fell off. I didn't think it was the right. I didn't seem to appeal to the right kind of client. I don't think. Look, this is a great generalisation, but if you're looking at £600-800 people, spending on a wedding, maybe it's going to do really well for you. But at the price point I was sending out, which was £1,500 and up, it was zero interest.
I suppose, I do know some people who have been very successful with it. Nick obviously has been very successful with the campaign stuff. I know a lot of family photographers who are successful with it. Weddings, I don't know. I've never really done anything with it. Lucas mentions engagement rate.
Yeah.
And I find that a little bit interesting because my engagement on my Facebook page, my business page, is always high.
Is it?
Always high.
Yeah.
I put a picture on there. It's just sucked in from Instagram. On Friday or Thursday perhaps it was, and the reach is like 8,000-9,000.
What?
200-300.
How many people have you
likes,
on your business?
engagements and stuff like that. Official likers on the Facebook page, I think it's about 13,000.
Well, that's amazing.
But most of them are other photographers, so it's it's irrelevant. But the thing is, I've always said this about Facebook, is if you stroke Facebook's beard.
Careful. Hold on a minute. If you stroke Facebook's.
So, for example, it doesn't really want people leaving Facebook.
No,
it makes its money from the adverts on Facebook.
Yeah. So every time you put something in like a YouTube link, of course it's not going to.
Doesn't like it.
It doesn't want you floating to the top there, does it? At all?
And also, like the engagement it's much like on Instagram. It's if you encourage conversation, you ask questions, things like that, then my engagement rate is. I did never see that time when everybody went, oh, Facebook's nobody's ever seeing my stuff anymore.
Yeah.
And I do actually think it's because people tried too hard and just weren't organic with it. Now that doesn't mean that I get bookings from Facebook, because I don't think I do. At least I can't remember the last person who said we found you on Facebook. I do get the occasional message, and there is the photographer thing in the mix there. But I think that, I reckon if you put the hard yards in, perhaps it'll work. But
did we answer his question there?
Probably not. Anyway, I hope it was useful, Lucas.
Said in a laconic style. Right, before we have this week's interview, let's do some Club Indulgence. I need to get mine, so you kick off, Kev.
Okay, so I'm looking for mine as well. This is a long one. This is from
Stand by.
Actual Advice.
Oh,
That's his name.
All right. Oh, okay. Doesn't want advice.
Actual Advice.
That would be very cheeky, wouldn't it? Be leaving a review asking for advice.
I bet that's not on his birth certificate. A great rapport, interviews and knowledge. Discovered this late last year and absolutely love the podcast. Neil and Kevin have a rapport and a genuineness which makes this listening a great experience. They really are informative and helpful, and the interviews with a range different photographers is really inspiring. My only minor issue
no
would be the wedding photography centric topics sometimes,
right.
which I can't relate to as a hobbyist listener. But understandably, they speak from their own experience and with a passion for their craft, so I wouldn't let this detract from the great show that they've created. All the best, guys. Love from Actual Advice.
Well, Actual Advice, we are now hobbyists as well, to be fair. We might talk about weddings, but we're essentially hobbyists.
We are, and interestingly, I was about to kick in and say, hang on, we don't always talk about weddings, but then all of the questions we talked about
are weddings.
Yeah.
We're trying to do something different. In the second half, it will be totally different. Although we did deal with Facebook a moment ago. This is a Lassaclon. Yeah, I think so. Kevin and Neil care about you, the photographer. Kevin and Neil really care about helping people improve their photography. Kevin and Neil help people across the road. No, he didn't say that. Instead of weekly talk only about gear, Kevin and Neil answer many questions from listeners and line up interesting interviews with peers. Of course, there is still some gear talk sprinkled in for those with gas, which is a plant-based diet. See, you have been listening.
This one is from Biobog1.
Talking of plant-based diets.
We should just have a listen. We should just have a list of all of the names. A really entertaining listen, even if you're not a Fujifilm shooter.
Yep.
Listen to this podcast religiously. The hosts are extremely knowledgeable, and there's so much healthy banter between them. It's not just about Fuji gear either. The guests that participate come from a wide variety of genres. Yes, thank you. Listen to that Actual Advice. It's not just about the Fuji gear and.
Go on. And
the guests they participate come from a variety of genres and backgrounds, which just adds another reason why you should give it a try.
You nearly got to the end of the music. If you sent in one of those reviews, thank you very much. And remember,
you're our favourite listener, and we mean it.
Right, time for this week's interview. Imagine this. One moment you're shooting weddings, and to be fair, you've only shot a handful of those, and the next you're making pictures and portraits of Michelin star chefs at work with the food that they're preparing. Sure, sometimes luck comes to gatecrash, but I'm a firm believer that by being in a place and just doing, you can create to a large extent how much chance or opportunity you give luck to fortuitously gatecrash your party. I started talking to this week's guest, Chris Orange, for what was initially planned as a half-hour chat or so about landscape and food. But we spoke for a lot longer, and he painted a picture of a jobbing photographer who's embraced this so-called luck and then had to quickly learn the skills, create other sides of his business, and work on building relationships, which Chris, I think, has become a master at. He talks about generosity and how to form stronger connections with agencies in the commercial world. And I thought, particularly this time for photographers internationally, this could be a good chat, split into two, where we dive a little more in depth into the subjects that now pay Chris's mortgage. We start, though, with a very human story, connected to the times we live in. First things first, Chris, your father's just pulled out of what's been a difficult 4 or 5 months for you as a family, recovering from COVID-19. How was you've just had your first meeting with him, haven't you? Since I think February.
Yeah, today actually, or yesterday. Wow. I've just come back. We had the weekend away, and during that time, we got to see Mum and Dad. It was a very difficult lockdown, like it was for so many people. My dad, he got COVID-19 as my mum did back in. It was like the end of February, March time, and they've been in Portugal. And they just got very ill. Both of them did for a few weeks. And then my dad just didn't recover. And in the end, he had to be rushed to hospital in blue light. And he was had to go onto the ventilator, like so many did.
So you had to have a difficult conversation with him then, didn't you? Before
we did. So I'm one of 6 children, and my mum, she said to the nurse, before you send him down, he needs to, at least have a conversation with his kids to say goodbye or whatever. So we all got to have one FaceTime quickly with him before he went down on the ventilator. And it was one of those bizarre moments where you don't want to say goodbye because you hope it's not goodbye, but you're not quite sure. Just want to, wish him all the best and tell him you're praying for him. And but amazingly, a long story short, he pulled through completely. And the hospital said that he's one of their only success stories. And so We were very, very blessed to have him back, and we saw him yesterday, first time in 5 months. So,
Oh, I bet that was emotional.
yeah, it's quite an emotional day actually, seeing him and Mum and one of my sisters. And it's just amazing, so grateful to the NHS. And in fact, my daughter, one of my kids, Amy, she wrote to the hospital to thank them for saving Granddad's life. So it was quite emotional.
How old's Amy?
Lovely letter. She's 10.
10.
So yeah, it was lovely. And,
wow. I bet that was quite a tough time for Amy as well, I would have thought.
yeah, they've been desperate to see their grandparents for ages, and it was one of those weird times. How much do you tell the kids? How much can they understand?
Well, I think it's been because we've got sounds like we've got similar age kids actually, Chris. One of them's 10, the other one's 12.
And one's 8.
Oh right, okay. And so these conversations, we've just found we've had to be brutally honest about some of this stuff. We live in an age where they're seeing stuff. We're going to talk about social media in a while, but we live in an age where they're seeing a version of the truth on social media, and if you either want them to believe everything they read on social media, or you want to put some checks and balances in and say, whoa, let's talk about this as a family.
Yeah, it's true. And actually, when we thought that my dad was possibly going to die, especially the hospital give you a very honest, they don't kind of pull their punches, they give a very honest appraisal of his health and his lung situation. And we had to say, we don't know if Granddad's going to wake up. And it's very difficult. But the kids are so good at just coping with these things. They take it as it is, and they just accept it. And but now they're delighted, obviously, because Granddad's back and he can play games with them again and mess around. So yeah.
Did he get when he came out of hospital? Did he have the guard of honor with the claps as he left?
Yeah, he didn't actually.
Did he not?
I think that I think that hospital, that particular hospital, they had a very difficult lockdown.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't think they had many good cases, and so I think it was so intense for them that in the end he just kind of came. My mum went to get him, and he just came out. But on FaceTime, we gave him a guard of honor, and we were very excited. Yeah. And the hard thing was you then can't see him for ages. So it's been quite a few weeks since he's been home recovering. Until he was allowed to come out of his shielding.
Well, I'm delighted he's okay.
Thank you.
So good news.
Yeah, great news.
I've been mooting much over the past few months, and you might have heard me talk about this on the podcast. Whenever I get a chance, really, the benefits perhaps of being a more generalised photographer. For 15 years, I've personally been very specialised in my work, but I go to your site, and I'm in the middle of redesigning mine at the moment. And I'm sort of delighted to see sites like your own, because I see interiors and food and events and landscapes and people and the subject we discussed yesterday, which was I was talking to Kev about video, and I'm guessing it was like this pre-COVID, of course, but I would imagine now you see this as a proper advantage. Yeah,
definitely. And actually, what I've found is that a lot of my clients want everything. And so they're not saying, can you come and shoot just our food? They're saying, can you shoot our food? And I've just had an email today from a client saying, can you come and shoot all our menu? And at the same time, we want the interior shot. And at the same time, we'd like some video made of the kitchen staff or whatever. So it's kind of a real, they see you, if they can come to one place and get everything, then they see that as a saving. So yeah, I actually forced myself to learn video a few years ago. I didn't actually want to learn it. I was just enjoying stills, but I forced myself. I started a YouTube channel just for the sole purpose of learning how to shoot video.
And how steep a learning curve was it?
It wasn't too bad. I think initially, cameras, at that point I was shooting with Canon, but now I'm shooting all Fujis. And actually they're so well set up for switching over, from your stills to your video, that it's kind of, I think you've got more in you than you realize. I think when you start to shoot, you do get better, and but your understanding of the light, your understanding of composition, it all carries over into video. And sometimes it's just that bravery to be able to say, I'm just going to start doing video. And I've found that, my clients have been really happy with what I've produced. And even if I was tentative in kind of offering it in the first place, that it's come out really well. And I think YouTube's a really great place to learn, because what's the worst that's going to happen? No one's going to like it. It doesn't matter. You just keep do another video until you feel like you're, producing material that you could start to sell.
How have you dealt with that side of YouTube? Again, we're coming to social media, and I always put YouTube in the social media bracket, of course. But how have you dealt with the currency of a thumbs down here and there?
Yeah, it's so bizarre. When I first started, the first set of comments were really good. I thought, this is lovely. I'm going to read all these comments. And then it all begins to come in. There's someone who just clearly hates you as a person, and it all starts. And I think it just took me a little while to think, actually, firstly, I'm not going to read them all. And secondly, I'm just going to not care, not in a proud way, but in a way that says this is only video. So if someone hates it, they hate it. There's much more valuable things in life to get upset about. So it took me a while to thicken my skin. But yeah, I did get there in the end. And now I don't, to be honest, I read some of the comments, some of the others I don't, just kind of play it video by video.
I watched a very funny video not so long ago. Somebody was just pulling off all the bad comments. And actually this video yielded tens and tens of thousands of views. And I thought, who's had the last laugh here?
Yeah, what a great idea.
I know in your commercial work you work with a lot of PR companies. There are two letters, Chris, that make me a little bit nervous. I've never really, despite having shot a reasonable amount of commercial work now and then, I've never really had to work with PR companies. What do you experience? Because I've heard it suggested that, well, three can certainly be a crowd when you have, the photographer, the subject, and the PR.
Yeah, it can be. It all depends on who you're working with at that PR company. And one of the things about PR is that they change personnel so regularly. It obviously is not a great industry for people to work in, because really regularly it's a new person, or the person you worked with in one company, suddenly now they're ringing you from another company. So it can be difficult, but it's the only way in to a lot of commercial work. Like if you were to target a company and try and shoot for, say it was a drinks company, if you went straight to the company, you wouldn't get anywhere. Like it all comes through their PR company. They book the shoot, they sort the budget. And they're often there at the shoot as well. So the client's often not even around. It's all done. And so often the PR company may get it in the neck if the shoot goes wrong. And whether you get it in the neck depends on how well you kept to their brief. But you have to be in commercial work. The number one thing is you have to make sure that expectations are sorted before. So that you know exactly what the client's expecting. And if you can understand a brief and you can fulfill that brief based on what you've been told, it will save you so much trouble. I've learned that the hard way.
How long have you been established in commercial work?
About 8 years now.
And prior to that?
Prior to that, I was just shooting as a hobby, just for fun. I actually went, my professional career began with it's a bit funny, really. It began with a magazine shoot for a celebrity chef,
right?
Because a photographer pulled out, and one of my friends knew someone at the management company, and they rang him, and then he said, "Oh, my brother-in-law does photography, having only shot a couple of weddings and not much else." And so I went along to this place and photographed this. Did a lifestyle shoot for the guy, photographed the food, and took one guy with me, and we just kind of did it as best we could. And from there, I then got asked to do a lot more magazine work with that magazine. And then the PR companies get involved, and then you're working for the chefs. And my first year of commercial work was shooting Michelin star chefs.
Yeah, no, amazing.
Yeah, it was terrifying and also great at the same time.
Well, I'm quite pleased you used the word terrifying in some respect, because I wanted to ask about the So it must be quite intimidating, I would have thought. So one moment you're pootling along, doing some social photography work, and the next moment you've got reasonably good names in terms of not just the chefs but also some of the products that you shoot. How did first of all, how did it all come together? I mean, how did you go from zero? I mean, I know you've explained that chef story there, but that doesn't really explain some of the product names that you work with. So you've gone from zero to that in a reasonably short amount of time. Let's deal with that before the intimidating side. Yeah,
okay. Well, I think the thing that I've realized is that the commercial world is quite a small world in terms of people talking about, photographers they've used or whatever. So I found there were two key things. One, referrals were massively important. And in fact, it's not worth wasting a single penny advertising commercial work, because all of it comes through word of mouth from one company to another if they like working with you. And that for me has been a massive thing, because I found initially PR companies coming to me after, say, a magazine shoot. Now, I was terrified doing those magazine shoots at first, because you're working with really well-established Michelin star chefs, and they're not known for being very pleasant, some of these people. So, in their kitchens, they're quite loud, it's quite difficult, and you've got the PR there or the magazine there. So I quickly had to work out how to shoot the portraits, the food, interiors, whatever. So that was one thing. But the second thing I found was I tried to be as generous as I could with my photos to try and build some relationships. So initially, when PR companies came to me and said, "We see you've done a shoot for one of our chefs, and for that magazine, how do we get hold of these photos?" expecting to buy them from me, I would say, "You can just have them, just take them." And there's one particular food PR company said to me, "Can we have the chefs from this shoot?" And I was like, "Yeah, you can have the photos from the shoot. Just take them." And they came back to me and was so amazed. I got a call the week after. They just said, "Look, can we give you all of our clients?" And it was as simple as that. From there, I had just this enormous amount of work coming in.
But they didn't take they didn't take advantage, though. I mean, you've been generous, you've given, but hopefully they've not then just taken.
Well, they've just said to me then, "Can we send all our clients to you?"
Yeah, but then are you able?
They paid me for all of them.
Good.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I then basically just set a rate. I chatted, but actually because at that point I wasn't sure about what rate to set, because I felt very much like I was intruding on another world that I've never been in before. I kept waiting for someone to come around and tell me you can't do this anymore.
It's that great imposter syndrome almost.
Yeah,
isn't it?
exactly that. I felt that for years, but especially initially, I didn't know what rates to set. And so I actually spoke to the PR company and just said, "Look, what do you think I should charge for that shoot?" Which, looking back now, is slightly like, "Really? Did you do that?" But actually, they were really kind, and they just said, and they must have seen on my website, I didn't have tons of, other work on there.
Yeah, but I think that's the honesty side, isn't it, Chris? I think you find that people, if you're generous, I think there's so many people that are generous in return and actually don't mind being asked. I think I think people take more exception to the fact of, if somebody's making out there something that they're not. I think people are happy to guide you through the process if they like you and they like your work.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's really important that you're honest about what you can't do as well as a photographer. That's where you get into trouble. If someone comes to you and says, I need this, I don't know, this photograph of this flower pouring through the air, and at the same time someone's going to be throwing an egg in the air, and there's this all this stuff that you just think, oh my goodness, it's a dark room, and so I've got to light this, I've got to get the shutter speed right, I've got to get the ISO, all this stuff. Initially, when I was learning this, I was quite honest with people and just said what I thought could be done, what couldn't be done.
And we were talking about YouTube. Are you going to be honest now and say, if you didn't know how to do something, did you go pootling off to YouTube and find out?
I learned most of my work on YouTube.
Wow.
I spent the first year I virtually lived on YouTube watching loads. There's a guy called Kyle Taylor, who's an incredible, he's like proper high-end commercial photographer for from a studio. And he had the most, at that point he'd done the most amazing course, and I watched every bit of that. And then I just, whatever I needed to do, somebody would ring me up and say, we need you to photograph this. At that point, I only had a camera. I had a 5D Mark I at that point, and not much else, and a couple of lenses. And so I would get a call and say, "Can you go and shoot this for us?" And I would have to research what kind of lens do I need for this for this shoot. Yeah. And then I would go and buy the lens, go or buy the flash, then do the whole course online, working out how to use these things and how to run them, and then go and do the shoot. And so, I learned a lot in quite a short space of time, but it was a lot of fun.
Are you a natural light shooter, or do you? It's difficult, I would imagine, to walk into some of these kitchens and want to set up equipment. They want you in and out as quickly as you can be.
Yeah, it depends what the shoot is. I actually do both. I do natural and I do three. I do natural, continuous, and flash. So it all depends on what I'm doing. If I'm doing a whole day shoot, say I'm at a restaurant and it's a whole day photo shoot, then I will set up an area. I'll make it like a mini studio, and they will bring food to that area, which I'll shoot, and then it'll go again. And then I'll use, and then as well as that, I'll move around the kitchen and I'll shoot, natural stuff. And then in the restaurants, which are very dark, they might want food shot out there as well, and then I have to light that as well, maybe with continuous light. I find that, say you're doing cocktails, continuous light's far better than flash. You get a much better, more controllable shot with that. So it depends. You have to be able to do everything, but initially I couldn't. Initially I was doing continuous lights with those screw-in bulbs. So I was carrying this enormous suitcase around London for about a year, get it everywhere. I was absolutely exhausted by it until I learned proper flash, and then learned to buy much smaller continuous lights.
In terms of advice for those who want to shoot food, because it is a very specialist subject, what do you usually say?
I usually say treat the the food like it's a face. And so I treat it like a portrait. I try and place it in the way that looks the most beautiful, and then work from there, and start with no light and gradually build in the light to where you think it needs to be.
Right.
You can overexpose food very quickly. And so, especially if you've got a white plate with a,
I was going to say that's the worst bit about it, isn't it? White plate. You must be, please, flashes. No white plates. Bring me something else.
Seriously, honestly, I completely agree. And actually, what you don't want is loads of flashes on the white plate. So you might have to really light it well for the very dark, burnt bit of fish or whatever it is, and then it's such a mixture of exposure balances.
Yes.
And so I think if you always start kind of reduced and gradually build up, then especially if you're being watched, because in some of these shoots, there's me, there's the client, there's their PR company, and there might be a branding company, and because it's tethered straight to a laptop, they're sometimes the first ones to see the shot before even I see it, because they're all huddled around the laptop waiting to see the shot. So there isn't a lot of time to get it right. You can't do 10 massively overexposed shots, because they're going to wonder why they've booked you in the first place. So you've got to try and get this right. And that's where I began to really love Fuji, because you've got the live view through the eyepiece, and you can really see a lot of the shot before you're done. And that was a big game changer for me.
Our thanks this week to Chris Orange. That's part one. Next week we expand with his thoughts upon social media and how he's been using it, but more in-depth stuff as well about landscape work and food photography. More then from Chris Orange in part 2 next week. Right, back to the questions. We've got the book coming up very soon as well. This week's book is...
This week's book is the most beautifully titled book in the world. It's called Self-Portraits with Cows Going Home by Sylvia Plassey.
It's an amazing title.
I'm not sure if I pronounced her name right.
No,
she's Hungarian.
Right. Nick Osborne, thank you for your question. Chaps, well done for continuing to do what you do and keeping us all sane through these strange times, yada yada. Tricky question for you. Oh, you ready for a tricky one?
Uh-oh.
Bearing in mind the recent racial controversy caused by Martin Parr, something he's apparently deeply embarrassed and apologetic about, I wanted to ask you both whether you had inadvertently publicised or endorsed anything that you didn't intend to. On the question of this particular story, is the risk of association an almost inevitable risk for such a prolific and influential voice in the arts world, or is it not so easily forgiven? What level of ethical or moral responsibility should the photographer or author, editor, contributor have with this type of juxtaposition, whether it was, in brackets here, unintentional, clumsy or otherwise? I note that Parr has repeatedly said he now regrets his association with this book, and that he wants to do more to promote diversity, including introducing bursaries for Black, Asian and minority ethnic photographers and actively collecting more work by Black, Asian and minority ethnic photographers. Thoughts, gents? Well, we do actually mention some political things with a lowercase p and sometimes with a capitalised P.
We don't
inevitably.
We don't draw lines. Let's put it that way.
No, but when I saw this, I was somewhat surprised, and I'm sure you were as well.
I didn't actually, until that email came through, I was unaware of the.
Oh wait, no, I'd seen it come up on the wire in inverted commas.
Then I looked into it.
I mean, I did start to think about what I may have inadvertently done or expressed in my work, but I honestly can't think of. of something. I mean, clearly, when you have that kind of profile,
we should give a bit of background
Yes.
to people who have no idea what we're talking about.
All right.
So Martin Parr wrote the foreword for a reprint of a book, and he wrote this foreword in 2017. The book is actually 25 years old. We won't mention the name of the book or anything because clearly it's a sensitive thing. And in that book is certainly one particular picture. I'm not sure if there's others. I've not actually looked at the book.
No.
That is seen as insensitive in the world we live in today, and it is absolutely
without doubt insensitive in that
Correct.
respect. Yeah.
So Martin did the foreword for the 2017 reprint. He didn't edit it. He didn't. In his, after I read about it, his statement said that he didn't actually, and it's entirely his own fault, and he's very apologetic. As he said, he should have looked at the images and all of that kind of stuff first. He wrote the foreword based on his knowledge of the photographer.
Do you not find it surprising that he didn't look through the whole book of the images?
Yeah, I mean, he clearly should have looked at the images first and then not put his foreword to that book for sure. 100% agree. He's come out fully apologised, and
he's fallen on his sword in leaving
the University of West of England's photography scholarship-y type thing.
Yeah. So he fell on his sword with that one.
He did, but also I think it's worth bearing in mind that I think if you look at Martin Parr's work over the years, you'd be very hard pushed to not see it as a diverse body of work that has no real boundaries. It's really kind of exploring British culture in all of its essence. So ultimately, he's done what he rightly should have done, which is apologised. I'm sure he won't make that mistake again. And I do believe it was a mistake rather than anything of malicious intention. And you know what? The other part of that question is, could things come and bite you on the bum?
I did start to think about it the other night. I was thinking, well, have I? I mean, in terms of the gravity of that, no. But in terms of the rather more what you might phrase less societally damaging and acceptable things, then many of us, Kev, will be open to skeletons. So this is a slightly different direction now, which whilst completely understanding, particularly in the current time for enlightenment and education, but taking those less grievous skeletons. Now, they could surface to cause issue too, couldn't they?
We've all done things. I mean, even our Prime Minister, when he was...
When you say even our Prime Minister, like you're surprised. Without getting political. Yeah, but he's known for saying a few things that they're terribly well thought out.
He's known for that, but also he's had to, somebody dug deep down into the delves of history and found out, heaven forbid, as a student, he had a joint. Yes. He had a puff on a drag on a cigarette of some kind. Yeah. And of course, that becomes the headline news. Does it really matter that? I mean, the Martin Parr thing definitely matters, but this thing about, really, really digging down to teeny little things in your past that, not on a kind of racial or religious hate basis or anything, but things that you may have done, things you may have said in the pub or whatever, it can come back, and you've got, I don't know whether
to be nervous about it or whether to,
the thing is, look, the way that I think about it is that if you have horrible opinions of people and you say horrible things, then you'll be right to be called out about it.
Yes.
But you shouldn't necessarily be called out about, I don't know, having a joint or something when you were 18 in university. I think...
Well, politicians have had to go through... I mean, I know we're talking on a totally different plane now to what the subject matter was with the Martin Parr thing that we were just talking about. But that's unfortunately the grubby state of journalism, isn't it? That you look back and dig deeply with some of the most benign things. When they're more important, of course, then yes, I think investigative journalism is right to call people out. Where you're voting for somebody and they might have an opinion where you think, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah. No. No,
absolutely. I think anything to do with creed, colour, ethnicity, gender, we live in a world where equality is sadly, we don't live in a world where people are equal, but we should live in a world where people are equal.
Yeah.
So I think Martin Parr has
He's apologised.
He's fallen over a wicket for sure,
and I'm sure he will not be making that mistake again.
No.
Right, your question.
No. My question. Oh, I was looking at my book.
I know you were. You were going into a happy place.
Look at
for a
this
moment,
wedding
weren't you?
picture. Sorry.
Let me have a look. Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Are those two pictures related, by the way?
I don't know.
I wonder if that handbag picture is at the wedding.
I don't know.
That'd be lovely, wouldn't it? Because that would be great sort of observation.
It probably is.
Talking about
actually.
something here that you can't see out the other side of the podcast.
Yeah.
But that makes you want to go and.
Anyway, we're really jumping ahead here.
We are.
We've got a question first.
Go on.
So this question is from Beverly Openshaw. Hi, Kev. Hi, Neil. I'm interested in getting into some macro work with my Fujifilm cameras and wondered if you could make some suggestions of lenses. What about the extension tubes too? Are they good? Regards, Beverly.
Oh, that was quick.
Yeah.
Well, I had those. They're not called extension tubes, are they?
They're called extensions.
Yeah. It's not quite a tube.
No,
it is a tube.
It's not. Yeah,
of sorts.
1.4 and 1.8.
I had those, and I found I've found sort of modicum of success with them, but I didn't use them too much. And in the end, they went. And I've been loaned on donated. I don't know what the word is. This 60mm lens.
Oh yeah, that looks familiar.
Look, it's in here.
Yeah.
Is this your one?
Looks like it. Is it dirty?
Yes.
Yeah, then it's mine. Yeah. Have you got my 35 1.4?
I'll have a look. Nope.
Well, anyway, Beverly, I actually used those extensions, and I like them. They're very hard to use to get right, because you need to manually focus. You need to get pretty damn close. So, of course, if you're using them for macro work, such as close-ups of insects or flowers, you need to get close, which means you're going to have to throw a light under it because the lens itself will shadow it
and glue the insect down.
No. So I quite like those, but they are hard to use, admittedly. But of course, in the macro world, I used to have a 60mm f2.4 lens. I don't know where it's got to. But there's also the 90mm lens, 80mm macro, which is I believe, I don't have it, but I think it's a 1:1 macro lens. So that's meant to be the bee's knees. It's not really a lens I would have purchased.
Do you do a lot of macro? Have you?
I used to.
Yeah. Have you done anything of late?
Not really.
No, not really. Okay. Thank you for your question, Beverly Openshaw. Let's look at some of the questions for the show that have come in on the Facebook. You can now. We just thought I got asked a few times of late whether we would, because we did during the actual lockdown have the ability to ask more questions on the Facebook group. And we removed it, never really went back to it when we went back to doing Monday shows. But so it's reinstated. So
sorry, can I just interrupt?
Yes.
You've got 54 friend requests that you haven't done anything with.
No.
Yeah.
Where?
There at the top where it says 54 in red letters.
Oh my word!
No, it just says people you may know.
No, there's not friend requests.
Oh, mine only comes up with friend requests up there.
No.
It doesn't do that.
No. Well, no, because you have so many friends. For me, it's obviously thinking you need a few more friends, mate.
That's interesting.
With you, it knows you have enough friends. So there we go.
It probably knows I just don't want any more.
Well, I've just added one in there. Right, Hubert Steve Cole. I find the Fuji app not sufficient for wireless remote shutter, especially for nature. Recommendations: XT2, XT3 for wireless setups for approx 100 to 300 feet. So that's for a bird's nest or fox den or something like that. Yeah.
Well,
that's neither of our specialities, of course.
It's not. However, before the Fujifilm app came along, I did used to have a remote triggery thing that worked on the hot shoe. And it was it was an app on the phone, and it triggered the hot shoe, so you could get it closer to your subject.
Yeah.
I have to say, I know a lot of people have problems with the app. I don't, although saying that I don't use it much. I don't specifically remember thinking, oh, this is not working. Yeah. But enough people have said they've got problems with it. There must be some kind of issue. Yes. So I don't really know, but there are third-party triggery type things that will allow you to stick your camera up by the bird's nest, and then you sit in your house and look at the
great, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Press the button when the time's right, kind of thing.
That'd be really handy. I know it's not supposed to be talking about weddings in this half. We promised faithfully, didn't we? But that would be really handy for weddings at the moment. Socially distanced, sent outside the church.
Yeah.
You can get them coming in, you can get them coming out. The rest of the time, you need to stay outside, photographer.
Yeah.
That would be a really handy facility to have, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. I mean, the app, the Fujifilm app is wonderful when it's working for those people who have problems with it, because you can focus. You can just you can be sat on the train, have the camera in your lap, pretend you're on your phone, and click.
Yeah,
you've done one of those things that everybody gets really angry about.
Yes. Right. As soon as we've answered one of these questions from the Facebook group, by the way, I'm going to remove the comment. It doesn't mean that we don't like you. It just means that we have some sort of filing system so that we don't end up asking the same question again and again and again. That's the right way to do it, isn't it?
No, I don't think so. Why don't you just put a comment at the end saying covered in this week's episode? Right, because some people are answering, you see.
Oh, I see.
You don't want to just remove it all.
What have I done now? Then I've just removed his comment.
Have you?
No, I hid it.
Yeah, just put a reply in now.
All right.
This is proper production, live production.
Yeah. Okay.
Do it under the last reply.
Do I need to do it now?
Yeah, because you'll forget.
Oh, no, under the last reply.
Under the last reply.
Okay.
It's nothing to do with Jim Swallows.
No, I know.
Covered in Monday show. Just like covered in Monday show.
Yeah. How to use Facebook. Right, I'll do that in a minute while you're doing this week's book, which looks at on the inside of that cover, by the way. Sylvia Plaschy is the photographer for this one.
It is, although I'm not sure whether we're pronouncing that right.
Plaschy, I think so. Plaschy.
It's Hungarian. So there may be a little bit of...
I've gone a bit French on it, haven't I?
There may be a bit of intonation needed in the words.
Okay.
So, Sylvia Plaschy. This book, like I said, I think at the beginning is one I picked up. I'm sure I picked it up in the World's End bookstore, which is great. And I'm just going to read you the little brief part of the introduction, because I don't know if many of you will have heard of her. Had you heard of her?
No, I hadn't, no.
In 1956, in the wake of the Hungarian Revolution, 13-year-old Sylvia Plaschy fled her native Hungary with her parents, carrying nothing but a small suitcase and a teddy bear. Ultimately arriving in the United States in 1958. Self-Portraits with Cows Going Home, Plaschy's most complex and personal book to date, is composed of a rhythmic cycle of photographs taken over the past 40 years during several trips back to Eastern Europe. And that's the little blurb on the introduction. And basically, it's one of those books that it's kind of sectioned into times, but there's some beautiful mid-spread images. This full page 109, full spread image here is, I'm just showing Neil.
This is a bloke with a geese between his legs.
Yeah, it's a guy.
That sounds a lot more suspect than it actually is. But there's a goose sitting there. If it's like he's petting his dog.
It's probably a market store or something.
Yes.
Yeah, I really want to go back to that little wedding section. So there's a image on page 38, which is absolutely beautiful. Yeah. And it's a bride and her new husband walking into a room. They're walking along the balcony outside of a building, and there's a lady walking behind them. I don't know whether she's part of the wedding or not. Then on the opposite spread is a handbag at what looks like the wedding reception. A simple, beautiful picture. Yeah. Now, each of these little sections in the book have little bits of introductions, and there's a nice portrait here. So on page 36, a couple of pages earlier, it says, André Kurzes was my friend, my mentor, and my honorary grandfather. During his visits, we had tea and jam and spoke Hungarian with each other. He took this portrait of me when I was 21 in his apartment on Fifth Avenue, around the time when I made my first trip back to Europe. He called me a taknios, which means snot nose. Oh, nice. Affectionately. Yeah. Lots of it's just beautiful. There's all kinds of
it's very eclectic, isn't it?
It's eclectic. It's I mean, look, so this picture here, do you know what? This is the most challenging thing for me, these book reviews on a podcast, because you can't show people. Yeah. You really do need to get hold of this book if you can. It's wonderful.
It's not too expensive either, actually. It's 20. I just found one on Amazon, 26 quid.
There you go. I'm not sure whether you'll get a first edition and stuff, or maybe there was only one edition. Who knows? Certainly
not for 26 quid.
But it's not about that. It's about the pictures. So this one on page 67. This is a picture of two prison suits, and it's simply titled Dachau, and then it says now a museum, 1985.
Oh my word! Now you've read those words. Now I can see those two prison uniforms there, and
with
I
reflections.
Can see them, backlit as well. God, yes.
So this was clearly taken at the museum because they're behind the glass walls. But remember, the book is about her entire journey over 30 years back and forth Eastern Europe, and the text next to this particular image on page 67 says, "In the end, my mother's parents were gassed, and her sister, my aunt Hetty, survived. Sanyika, my mother's brother, though he was seen waiting at a train platform somewhere in Europe, didn't ever make it back. My mother never stopped looking for him. And then there's humorous pictures, and there's beautiful portraits.
There's a long tail project then about her life.
Yeah, well, her heritage. Because I don't believe any of this is. She lived in America most of her life, and I don't believe any of this is from there. I believe this is mostly the stuff she's photographed on her return journeys to Eastern Europe. Wonderful. So page 183, opposite, candles are lit for the dead of the 40th anniversary of the Hungarian Revolution outside Parliament in Budapest, October 23rd, 1996.
Do you think you'd ever, considering how many frames you've made, now I know your career started in photography later than that it looks like, obviously her interest in photography began. Do you think you'd ever be able to turn out a long tail project, a book, looking back at all the stuff you've done with your family, the photographs you've made when you've been to sporting events, the stuff you've done abroad, the pictures you've made while you've been carrying out your Fujifilm ambassadorial duties in different countries?
Nah, you really? Can. Yeah, I mean, you can print. You can make I could make a book of them, of course, but they wouldn't be. I mean, whenever I look at things like this, I always think. I said it to you when we were off air. I wish I was a proper photographer.
Kev, we are. We're potless. We're now proper photographers.
We are. Yeah,
we're now artists.
We're proper photographers because we don't earn any money.
No money.
No, but this is special. And,
it is.
Very
special.
To have the skill and talent to do this, and the foresight to make it into and the patience. 30 years.
It's 30 years of work in that one book.
Yeah, wow. Brilliant book. Self-portrait with cows going home. Buy it.
That's probably the best title.
We will, of course, link to it.
We've ever had.
There you go.
Yeah. Right, back to your questions. Another one from Facebook. Aaron Cousins. On Monday, Kev posted a lovely picture, Instagram, of a bridesmaid with the last-minute nerves, and he noted that it was shot using his X100T. I asked Kev if he still uses X100 series cameras at weddings due to the single card slot dilemma, which he replied he did. Like many of us, I love these little cameras, and it was heartwarming to hear that in our increasingly litigious world we can still get away with it, albeit as a second pocket camera. However, have either of you ever suffered a loss of images due to a corrupt card, and did it cause you any major problems? Love the show, yada yada. Aaron Cousins. Have you ever lost stuff? We talked about this a little bit before. I think we talked about my assistant, or rather second shooter.
Yeah, she lost the cards.
But, I mean, she didn't lose them either. They got stolen, didn't they? Yeah. But, that's a loss.
I haven't had any corrupted cards. Touching wood, touching everything.
What must you never, ever do when you're out on a job?
Delete.
Never delete an image.
Correct.
Because that can corrupt a card, can't it?
Can indeed. Yeah. And also you might delete a nice picture.
That's true.
Yeah, no, so I haven't. But then I always go for the SanDisk Extreme Pro cards. They're more expensive. Yeah. I always make sure that they're from reputable sources as well. So Amazon, Wex, Park Cameras, all of those places.
Are you worried that people might pick up something that's not necessarily the label that they're thinking they're receiving, or they may get something else instead of what they're hoping for?
So many faked memory cards.
Is there?
Millions. SanDisk, they're plagued with problems.
Are they? Do they know? Well, of course they know that.
Yeah, they do. So on SanDisk's website, you can put in the serial number and it will do a check.
Oh, really?
All kinds of things like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so obviously always go with the most. That doesn't mean that they can't fail, of course.
No.
Everything's got a lifespan. I typically recycle my cards about every 18 months as well.
Oh, so do you throw them away? You don't?
I don't throw them away, but I get some new ones in, and then I'll keep the other ones for maybe YouTube in or whatever. I don't just throw them out.
The great thing about SD cards is they're dead cheap, really, aren't they? So
Well, they're not that cheap, I don't think. I mean, if you want
in comparison to these new CF things.
Oh yeah, and the QXDs and stuff. But if you want a UHS-2 card, which the Fujifilm cameras use now for really fast cards and 4K filming and all that kind of stuff, they can be 64 gig cards, about 125, 130 pounds.
Okay, that's true. Yeah.
But obviously the UHS ones are not as expensive. And so no, I've not had a failure. Luckily, touch wood.
Do not scrimp on your cards. And that's it for this week. We're out of time. Time, gentlemen, please. Thank you very much for your questions. Keep them rolling in, please. Send them to click@fujicast.co.uk. Thank you to our guest this week, Chris Orange. If you can share the episode on Twitter or on Facebook, you are a star. Let us know where you've been sharing to, because we'd like to give those platforms a shout out. Music is from Blue Wednesday. I'm sure usually I say a whole lot more stuff there. Oh yeah, see you on the Facebook group for your questions. Yes. And don't forget the moderators, Steve and Peter. Steve's back from his holiday now, isn't he?
I think so, yeah.
He went to this gorgeous little cottage, didn't he? Did you see it?
I think I saw something. He went to take some pictures of sea lions or something, didn't he?
Did he? What? What, in his cottage? Blimey. So Steve and Peter are there too with their little shiny FIFA referee whistles, as I say every week. And make sure you behave yourselves in there. Send your questions in, as I said, to click@fujicast.co.uk. Music from Blue Wednesday. We're supporting music from the incredible artlist.io. And if you'd like to see our offerings to the photo community, visit fujicast.co.uk. Lots of info about today's show, the links, etc., the stuff that we talk about. And there's a stack of resources. We haven't talked about this for a while. Oh, what's that?
We must remember the toolbox competition.
Toolbox competition!
I was waving at you for 10 minutes then.
Have you got the art? Have you?
No.
Oh.
So we've just got to keep talking about it.
Oh, right, okay.
To remind people. But we've only had 4 entries so far.
Oh, there's more than that now.
Oh, maybe 6 then.
Yeah.
I don't know, but not enough.
Keep sending them in.
Yes.
I thought for a minute you were thinking we're supposed to draw the toolbox thing. I was like, not this week. No, surely not.
No. So don't forget. So we're looking for pictures. Go to the website, fujicast.co.uk, click on the menu item that says Toolbox Competition, and you can read it all in there. We are looking for pictures that describe your or kind of show us your way
exit,
out.
your way out
your
from
exit from the crisis, if you like, or the lockdown at least, because I think we're still in the crisis. And the winner will get a toolbox, which is a wonderful little device for allowing you to edit much more quickly with Lightroom, dials and whistles and bells and knobs and sliders and things. A little bit like what Neil's got in front of him now, but much smaller.
Oh yeah. I'm still looking for mine. Has my one arrived yet? No, it doesn't.
I don't think so.
No, it's not in there. No. It must be with that 35mm of yours that I've got.
If you don't win it, of course, there is a link there where you can get a discount should you want to buy one anyway, and that will help you out. So there you go. Toolbox. Yes.
Toolbox. See you next week. Bye.
The FujiCast is an independent Loading Zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.